Test one. Test 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Mic check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Test 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Good. Oh. Mic test 1, 2, 3, 4. Good.
And now, we bring you the following live press announcement from D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser. Our regularly scheduled program will resume following the announcement.
Good morning. I am Louis Fairby, Chancellor for the District of Columbia Public Schools. I am honored to welcome you here today to Van Ness Elementary School. Also want to recognize Principal Robinson Rivers, who leads this elementary school. Also want to welcome Mayor Bowser and also our deputy mayors, the Metropolitan Police Department, and all of our agency partners that support DC Public Schools and our families and residents. It's a pleasure to have a conversation today around how we support our students as relates to health and safety. As you know, as part of our efforts to support students here at this school and the other 116 schools around the district, it is always our priority to ensure that our students are first safe and also loved, challenged, and prepared. To accomplish this goal and mission, we know that we must rely on our agency partners, and this is truly a cross-agency effort to ensure that our students are excelling academically, socially, and emotionally. Today, you hear more specifics about initiatives specifically around safety to ensure that our students are getting to and from school safely, and also when they're on our campuses, they're safe as well. It's my pleasure at this time with that to turn it over to Mayor Bowser.
Thank you, Chancellor. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to beautiful Van Ness Elementary School in the heart of Ward 6. I am joined today by members of my administration, Chancellor Lewis Farabee, Chief Conti, Deputy Mayor Babers, Director Lott, MPD. Am I missing anybody? Welcome and thank you for being here. I'll just amplify a little bit what the Chancellor has said. Obviously, we focus every day and night and all day in between on making sure that DC residents are safe. We recognize that we are experiencing a challenging time in our country and in our city with increased gun violence. And our focus and determination to solve those problems and bend the curve for that level of violence is also increased and even more determined. So I want to thank everybody involved for their focus, and especially thank DC residents for helping us in every way that we've asked, from getting security cameras to using our tip lines, to being block captains in their own communities, and to making sure that young people are connected to schools and services. And for the past 18 months, we know that the entire ecosystem that supports public safety in our city has been strained by COVID and closures related to COVID. I am pleased, and Chief Conti will tell you that MPD will be hosting a first ever, I'm told, youth summit this Saturday to discuss civic engagement, social change, and youth violence in the district. Over 100 kids are already signed up. Our police department with George Washington University will be facilitating an interactive day of conversation. It's critical that these young voices are part of the solutions we craft. Our young people have firsthand experience and insights about what happens on our streets, and it's important for us to hear from them. So they will be able to tune in, kids all around the city, on Channel 16 and MPD social media. Multiple agencies in our government are also focused on an issue that's impacting kids and adults throughout our city, and that is traffic fatalities across all 8 wards. So multiple agencies in DC government are working around the clock to make sure that our streets are safer. And today, we are announcing additional traffic safety enhancements in school zones across our city. So in concert with the district's Vision Zero plan, MPD's traffic safety and specialized enforcement section has developed a plan to target traffic enforcement and education in the area around schools, to provide additional safety to the high levels of pedestrian traffic in those areas during, at the start and at the end of the school day. The goal of this focused enforcement is to protect people. And let me be clear, what focused enforcement means: if you're observed not following the rules, you can be pulled over and ticketed. That focused enforcement is designed to keep our streets safe, especially for young people. So with that, I want to invite Chief Conti to come up to talk about MPD's role in traffic safety.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good morning, everyone. And also, good morning to the rest of my colleagues, D.C. government colleagues, the Chancellor, Deputy Mayor Geldhart, Deputy Mayor Babers is here, as well as the Director of DDOT, Everett Lott. Thank you all for being here. Throughout 2020 and 2021, the role of police in our society has taken center stage. When I became chief, I made a commitment to listen to the concerns and solutions that D.C. residents have in the space of public safety and policing. We partnered with Howard University and hosted a series of listening sessions, but what we realized was that the youth voice, specifically the voice of young people in school, was absent from these conversations. During an MPD budget hearing, the idea of a youth summit was first brought up. Paired with what we saw in the listening sessions, this gave rise to the planning of a summit. This Saturday, December the 4th, we are making good on our promise to listen to the communities we serve by hosting an MPD Youth Summit in partnership with the students of George Washington University. The summit is not intended for us adults to just give information and tools to our youth, but rather to provide a space for us, for me specifically, to listen to the concerns of our young people, to hear their ideas and solutions. There is diversity of opinion among youth of what the role of police should be, and this summit will elevate those voices. This summit is also not just a one-off event, but will launch a process of intentionally listening to our youth, whether that be through follow-up summits, listening sessions, advisory boards, and otherwise. The youth of Washington, D.C. deserve to be elevated and to be safe. Unfortunately, this year, we've had 2 young children, one 5 and one 4 years of age, who lost their life in traffic fatalities. Additionally, we hear from parents about concerns in school areas regarding reckless motorists while young children are traveling to and from school. We have heard from the community, and they want to see our streets safer for all of us who use D.C. roadways. I am here today to announce a new initiative through our Traffic Safety and Enforcement and Specialized Enforcement section. In concert with the district's Vision Zero initiative, MPD has completed a plan to target traffic enforcement and education in the areas around schools within each police district. In addition to directing enhanced enforcement in school zones, MPD will also deploy officers in each police district to specifically conduct traffic enforcement in the area around school 3 hours prior to student arrival time, 2 hours during, and 3 hours after school dismissal times. Officers will focus on distracted driving, speeding, stop sign violations, and pedestrian violations within these areas. School resource officers will distribute traffic safety literature to roadway users in these areas and remind them to slow down and follow the rules of the road. MPD will rotate the variable message boards with traffic safety messaging to key schools across the city to provide enhanced awareness to all roadway users. MPD will prioritize education and enforcement by school within each district based on available crash data. The goal of this targeted traffic enforcement is to modify the behavior of all roadway users around schools in the District of Columbia. The deployment will change as necessary throughout the initiative based on data and critical incidents. The goal of this focused enhancement is to provide additional safety measures in school zones for all drivers, bicyclists, pedestrians during high pedestrian traffic times. This will conclude my formal statement, and at this time, I think we'll open it up for any questions that you may have.
Questions, guys?
Mark?
So, Chief, you're going to release 7 locations today. Should we take from that, or what should we take from that? Are those the most dangerous schools, the schools that you've had the highest number of incidents? And is there any of that data that you can release to us that would let us know how many incidents there actually have been involving students on their way to or from school?
Yeah, Mark. So what we're doing, we're looking at locations all across the city, not just data, but complaints that we receive that come in from residents, stuff that we hear as we're out and about in community. I mean, I think that certainly has to weigh in to these decisions. When we talk about the fatalities specifically that we've had so far, as you probably know, the 5-year and 4-year-old, those were not during school hours when those two children lost their lives. But we want to make sure that we can focus our efforts in the areas that are that we receive complaints, and then again want to make sure that we have the ability to move those resources around as needed. So the areas today or this week, could change next week. Again, it's intermittent enforcement around the area. We'll release the information that we can, and we'll follow up with you after this. Yep. Next question. Darcy?
Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah, Chief, we were talking ahead of time a little bit about the tragedy that happened on Chester Street in Southeast the day before Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
What update can you give us regarding that investigation and who may have been at fault, whether the gun has been recovered, kind of what was going on with that, and whether any charges would be filed, and if the mayor would like to speak also just about this tragic incident that happened with a gun inside a condo. Thanks.
Thank you. So let me call that child by name. His name is Legend Wheeler. He would have been 2 years old, coming up on the 4th of December. Legend Wheeler. That being said, the Metropolitan Police Department, we're working very hard to really get to the bottom of what happened in this case. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot that I can share with the public, but I will say this at this point. There are individuals, family members, that we want to get really their side of the story as to what happened to this child, and those family members who were present have opted to seek counsel. And as they're seeking counsel, that makes it a little bit more difficult for us to really get the story as to what happened to this child. They're represented by counsel. So as we proceed through this investigation, understanding that there's a funeral, etc., that's coming up for this young child, we're working as quickly as we possibly can to really work with those family members and get to the bottom of what happened with this child. I wish I had more that I could report to the public at this point, but the investigation will move as quickly as family members cooperate with the police.
Do you think it's possible that a child of this age could pull a trigger on a gun and shoot himself?
I think anything is possible. Probable is another issue, and I also think that if that is the case, then we need people who were present to just tell us what happened. Sam?
Chief, I saw over the weekend in that same block, there was a shooting that might have involved the police as well. Is that related at all, or?
Totally unrelated to the. Thank you for the question. Totally unrelated to that incident, and that incident that you're referring to, the police-involved shooting. Essentially, individuals showed up to a party with two guns, a long gun and a handgun, and at some point decided to use that firearm. Thankfully, no one was injured as a result of that recklessness. Shortly thereafter, that person and those two firearms, that person was taken into custody, and those two illegal firearms were removed off the streets of the District of Columbia.
It appears, from what you just told us, so it appears that part of the family is cooperating with the police and part of the family is not. Is that what we're hearing?
I won't make that distinction, Sam. I'll just say the people who we need to talk to, who have the most knowledge about what happened, they have decided to seek counsel prior to giving a formal statement to the Metropolitan Police Department.
Chief, a follow-up, if I may.
Yes.
Does holding someone accountable in the case of Mr. Wheeler, this young child, does that depend on finding a firearm?
Not necessarily. I don't think it depends on having. I mean, we make cases all the time where we don't have a firearm, but we do know, obviously, this child lost his life as a result of a firearm, and we also know that that child, very unlikely that child brought that firearm into the home. So when you talk about accountability, I think adults need to be adults. We need to talk through what exactly happened with this child, and we need to allow the process to take place. I mean, obviously, nothing that we do will ever bring this child back to life, and that is very unfortunate. but for the many who are in our community who are wondering what happened in this case, I think that the community deserves answers as well.
And then another question, on another video that's going around on social media, I'm not sure if you saw this yet, but it appears that there was a woman kind of banging on an officer cruiser's door or window, and then a pursuit of many officers goes to that woman. It's on Fairmont. It's getting a lot of attention. Have you seen this video at all? Do you have any explanation for what happened there that you can give to the public?
Yeah, so in a nutshell, our officers were conducting an investigation up on Fairmont Street in Northwest. As you know, in that area recently, we had a double shooting a couple of days ago over there near the metro station, but in addition to that, that's one of our fall crime initiative areas that we've been focusing on. As the members were conducting their investigation, our officers got assaulted by an individual. Pepper spray was deployed by one of the officers on the scene. The individual was taken into custody, placed under arrest for assaulting the police officers, and several members of the community were very upset. They didn't want the person going to jail. The person didn't want to go to jail, and we had what you saw in the video that's out there. So, you know, like in some of the cases that we experience here, people don't want to go to jail. That's unfortunate that people have to go to jail, but when crimes are committed, when our police officers are assaulted, people are going to be held accountable for that. Thank you. Yes, Sam?
Mayor, everybody's talking about this new South African variant of COVID, and I just want to know what the effect here is in the city. Is DC doing anything in particular?
Well, DC Health will participate in the kind of the national discussion about what we need to do in America, frankly, with the Omni variant. So as we learn more in those discussions, we'll have deeper discussions locally.
It's not having any impact on basically the rules of COVID in DC at this point.
We haven't, like I said, Sam, we're going to participate in the national discussion. This COVID has been evolving over the last 20 months. And as we've done over the last 20 months, if we get new information, a new variant, then we will respond accordingly, but we don't have any changes at this point.
Chancellor, you know, early on when schools resumed, we were having entire classes of children sent home. I'd just like some assessment at the current time of, you know, how is the school system adjusting to this?
Yeah, we have adjusted as well as we can at this point. We have, as you know, a symbiotic relationship with our communities and schools. So when we see greater transmission in COVID in our community, that does have an impact on operations. Fortunately, most recently, we've seen a decrease in the number of personnel and students to test positive and the need to quarantine accordingly. We've also seen operations continue to run smoothly as relates to our layered approach, which includes masking, our HVAC enhancements, and a number of other strategies that we have in place. We continue to have strong participation in our asymptomatic testing protocol as well, and have less than 1% of students who test positive through that protocol.
You don't have to give me an exact number, but roughly how many people are in the DCPS are quarantined at this point?
That number varies, as you know, daily. Prior to the holidays, it ranged from anywhere to 300 to 400 to 500 individuals in quarantine. But again, that would be a specific point in time.
Can I follow up on a couple of Sam's questions? First of all, will this Omicron variant change any of the many COVID protocols in the schools right now?
We don't anticipate that there'll be any changes at this time. As Muriel Bowser spoke to earlier, our collaboration with DC Health will continue as it did throughout the early stages of the pandemic, and will be guided by their leadership.
And Mayor Bowser, do you know how many of the COVID tests in DC right now are being sequenced to find out if they are this Omicron variant?
I don't, but DC Health can follow up with you about that.
I have a question about boosters.
Can you step over 1 second? I can see you. Okay.
Sure, okay. For booster shots.
Flags. FNS, flags.
Maybe
Chancellor.
new flags.
New flags, please.
Flags are in order.
Okay. I'm sorry, but this is one of my school pet peeves. There are other things to be concerned about for sure, but we'll have those replaced.
Booster shots for DC residents. What's the stock of boosters in the city right now? Are there enough? And we're hearing from some people who are having a tougher time than expected at this stage in the pandemic to get a booster shot. Do you discourage or encourage people to go outside the city to get a shot if they can't find one? And does that...
I'm not sure why anybody wouldn't be able to find one in the city. We host a daily pop-up. I haven't gotten any word that boosters haven't been available at our sites. You can go. I'd encourage you to get your booster shot when it's time for you to get your booster shot. And I don't really care where you get it. But you can, I don't think that we have any shortage in the city. Is that where you
Well,
getting
some people
reports?
mentioned pharmacies or whatnot not having lots of appointments available, people waiting a week or two when it seemed like you might be able to just walk in and get one sometime.
Okay, I think that may be the case in some outlets about how their appointment systems work. But I'm pretty sure there is a daily walk-up site where you would be able to get all, I think all three shot, or is it just the two? It's Moderna and Pfizer boosters.
Hi, Scott Broma, Channel 9. A couple of items back on this pedestrian thing around
Thank
schools.
you. Mm-hmm.
One is at a previous press conference, I remember a couple of parents saying they felt like during COVID somehow traffic enforcement just wasn't happening. I wonder if Chief Conte could disabuse us of that or tell us the real story. And second of all, I think there are a lot of people anxious about increased enforcement. Somehow it might be open season on motorists and equity issues. So could we talk about that a little bit?
Yes,
please?
increased enforcement means more people will get stopped. And the people who will get stopped are the people who aren't following the rules. And so I always, when we talk about having increased enforcement, is that push and pull. We want it safer for kids to cross the street to get to school, for seniors, and for everybody to be safer. But that does mean that there will be increased interactions with the police. And so what we ask is that you follow our traffic laws. You won't have to worry about being pulled over. If you are pulled over, provide the information that you're asked by our officers. And stop speeding on our streets. Stop running stop signs on our streets. Stop running red lights. Stop driving aggressively. Stop using your phone. Stop texting. It's not that important. It's not that important. And so we have to recognize that we are in a period, we're coming through COVID, where there weren't a lot of cars on the road at some period of time, and people are driving so much faster. They're taking too many chances. They're using their phones and texting. If I could tell you how many times that, I drive with 2 police officers every day, and I sit in the car and I can look down on other people, and so many times they're not doing anything. They're going through social media, driving. So we all have to recognize that we have a responsibility when it comes to making our streets safer. People are very critical of the government, but we also have to look at ourselves who are drivers and making sure that we're following the rules. We had driving as a privilege. These cars are thousands of pounds. When they get moving, they're deadly weapons. So we have to treat them like that. And that is why it is so important for us to engage the Metropolitan Police Department in even a more systematic and targeted way of looking at where we have a lot of our little folks moving around, going to school, and making sure that they are safe.
Do you have any figures that indicate the number of sort of citizen contacts and traffic stops through the COVID period, and whether that's slowed down, picked up, or where it's going to be going as this unfolds?
Yeah, we'll continue to do traffic enforcement. I can tell you we write thousands of tickets, and that hasn't stopped. When we look at where we were this year, or where we are so far this year, in comparison to last year. In some categories, there's a decrease. I think overall it's a less than 10% decrease. But again, to the mayor's point, when you talk about traffic safety and safety of our children, I hear that all across the city, in all wards of our city. In addition to that, as part of our deployment, you may have noted during my comments, I mentioned that officers would be deployed in all sections of the city. So it's not in one section of the city or two sections of the city. It's in all sections of the city. So whoever the driver of said vehicle may be that the mayor mentioned, who's texting or on Instagram or whatever the case may be, wherever they happen to be, if they're observed by our officers, they will be stopped and ticketed for that type of behavior. So thank you for your question.
Chief Conte.
Hey, James.
Yeah. When I was going through school 10 years ago, I remember you had school crossing guards.
Mm-hmm.
Are school crossing guards being used? And I'm talking about the young people.
Mm-hmm.
Are they being utilized in terms of this?
You talking about like the safety patrols?
Yeah, yes.
So I was the captain of the safety patrols, James. So I know exactly what you're talking about. Just wanted to make sure we were talking about the same thing. I would have to really kind of defer to my DCPS colleague. That program is normally run out of the schools. I had my little orange belt and all that good stuff, man. So I appreciate you bringing that up. I think it's important to get our young people involved in safety at a very early age. So if Dr. Furby want to address that.
Thank you, Chief Conte. We're not all surprised by your participation. But that is a part of our effort. Schools make decisions around how they champion students as a part of their safety efforts on campus. It could be as formal as safety patrols or other safety ambassadors. And as a part of our Safe Passage program, there's often collaboration between adults in the community and students as students transition to and from school.
Okay, we'll take a couple more. Yes and yes.
I have one question for you, Mayor, and then one question for the Chief. Mayor Bowser, the controversy with Dave Chappelle and Duke Ellington continues. At this point, do you feel they should just cancel the renaming altogether?
I got some emails from parents over the weekend, and I have to. I think the school is on the right path in giving a voice to students and their concerns. I understand that there was a session. But also giving voice to artistic freedom that they're training there. So I'm going to be supportive of the school.
And then, Chief, if I can follow up with you on the event today and the purpose of this new enforcement. The story behind it, though, is that we're still with not enough officers on the department. How are you now maneuvering these officers to provide more enforcement here?
Well, as you know, the mayor, one of the things that she mentioned earlier in the year, especially at the height of some of the violence that we were experiencing in the city, is that whatever overtime we needed to ensure the safety and security of the residents of the District of Columbia, we were authorized to use. So we, in this case, will be making sure that our officers are able to be out there through the usage of overtime. This will be additional duties for officers, but again, at the heart of it, it's really a public safety issue and making sure our kids are getting safely to and from school.
But also, when officers are doing traffic safety, they're also doing other safety. And in fact, it may spread the officers out a little bit. So the chief, of course, knows what he needs to do in regards to deployment and making sure all bases are covered.
So this is for the chief and maybe the mayor also. I'm wondering why, and if you would consider changing, if you can explain your policy. The public can get a 251 within minutes, and I applaud that, of any incident that the DC police investigate. Except for traffic incidents. For some reason, when it comes to traffic investigations, the public and the press are required to fill out a Freedom of Information request to get even the most basic information, which takes weeks and sometimes months, and certainly goes against the transparency that Mayor Bowser ran on. And I'm wondering why you require that, Chief, for this one incident. For anything else, you talk about Vision Zero and everything else, but for this one thing, we have to go through this legal hurdle to get any kind of documents. For murders, assaults, anything else, your office will get me a 251 within seconds if I send in a request, but not for traffic. Can you explain that? And would you consider changing that?
Well, first of all, I appreciate you acknowledging how quickly we are in terms of getting information to you for those very significant incidents that you mentioned, murders, etc. That is significant. Traffic is also a very significant issue, and significant in a number of different ways, Mark, not just from the standpoint of the public having a right to know what happened, but once that information, I think the reason why it is the way it is, and this is just my thoughts here, part of the reason is there are other people who request these documents, and then they start getting calls and knocks on their doors from attorneys and people who want to, talk about injury and so forth, and it really becomes a burden to people. And I think that's how we got to this space. I think there's a name for it. You guys probably more familiar with when lawyers come knocking on your door, hey, were you injured? That kind of thing, or their investigators come knocking on your door and calling you. So. I think that's how we ended up in this space, quite frankly, Mark.
So I appreciate that. Yeah. But on 251s, your very quick, able staff is able to redact the phone numbers and personal identifiable information of victims every day. They could certainly do the same. You could at least release a 251 on a traffic incident. It just seems, and I appreciate you wanting to protect victims from, I'll say it, ambulance chasers.
Okay,
right?
You said it, not me. All right.
and that's to be commended. But there's a flip side to that. There's a right for the public to know, and as there are so many advocates on this issue that there seems to be a need for some kind of common ground.
Is that a legislative issue there, Mark, that you're talking about? Is it a?
I don't know that.
Yeah, I think it may very well be, but there's been I would have to check on that and kind of confirm. I don't know if anyone knows kind of offhand, but I think there are a lot of other issues there, other than the police just hitting the switch and releasing all of these reports. I think it took some time for us to get actually, quite frankly, to where we are right now.
Last question right here.
Mayor, 4 council members want encampment clearings to stop during hypothermia season when it's very cold. Have you received a letter from these 4 lawmakers, and what do you think of their ask?
I saw it on Twitter. I assume that it's been sent to my office. I'll check it out. But I think it's, how should I say? It doesn't make sense. And it doesn't make sense because it seems that these lawmakers are arguing that we should keep people outside during hypothermia season. And what we're arguing is that nobody should live on the street when we have shelter and housing available.
One more quickly, for the chief, with murders, surpassing 200 this year. The fall climb initiative ends on, I believe, mid-December. Does that need to be extended? Has that proven effective? And what do you expect going into the holiday season and the end of the year?
Yeah, we're always going to be fighting crime. The fall crime initiative, winter begins December 21st, I believe it is, right? We're always going to be fighting crime, regardless of what the season is. I think the way that we do it and how intentional we are in certain areas based upon crime patterns and how we deploy, those are things that we look at when we put officers or when we deploy officers out in community. My intention is that we continue to focus on communities where the needs are. And the thing that this thing is, a lot of times crime is concentrated, but sometimes it's also fluid and starts to pop up in the areas where we don't normally see crime happening. So I think it's important for us to just remain flexible in that space, look at where we are as we move into the winter months, and look at what our deployment is and how best to deploy our resources. Thank you.
Last thing I'm going to say about Baby Legend that you heard from the chief already, and you heard Sam brought up another shooting that happened on that same block. Likely we're going to find that there are all illegal guns involved. A couple days prior to that, we asked the community to support us to get illegal guns out of their homes. And I'm going to reiterate that program right now. If somebody comes to your house for a holiday party with a long gun, call the police. Call the police. If you know that you have babies in your house with guns, you don't want them there, call the police. All right? And let the police handle and deal with people who are walking around keeping our homes and communities unsafe. You may be eligible for an award up to $2,500, depending on the gun, up to $7,500. But more than that, It could be a 2-year-old alive. Call the police.
Since we had a press conference, I think on Monday, whatever, we recovered 96 firearms, 96 illegal firearms in the District of Columbia. How much will be paid out will be based upon, I haven't gone through with ATF to see what the number of payout is going to be, but we definitely have an uptick in information and gun recoveries over the course of just the last week and a half. So thank you for that.
We now return